an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Soulsmith Chapters 12, 13, and 14. In these chapters, I really thought we were going to get a heist. But instead, we got like a quarter of a heist. We got heist light. We got heist like the prequel. And then pretty much we just get Ethan. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andrew for commissioning this episode. He is in the chat. Hello, Andrew. This was the most short-lived plan ever. I knew, of course, that something was going to go wrong. But you always think in things like this that it's going to go wrong at the end, that they will have almost achieved their goal. Maybe they'll get some people out. Maybe they'll get some scales in their pockets. And then they'll get caught, like after they've gotten 60, 75% of the way there. And instead, our guys get nothing except disowned by Grandma Fisher, which I'm not entirely convinced what it looks like happened is what actually happened. Because what it looks like happened is that she was like, oh, were these two? No, I do not know her. Which, even if it is what happened, I'm not particularly mad at her about that. They put her in a bad spot. On the other hand, I would love to have heard what was going on inside her head when that all went down. Because she pretty much only talks about Yaren in that moment and doesn't even look at Lindon. And I can't tell what that means. I am assuming, basically, that she's doing a similar thing to what Ethan does later. Because she has told Lindon, buddy, I already said to you that I can't come and fucking rescue you all the time. And that you have to be able to watch your own back. And then you go and walk right the fuck on in there. I don't know what you expected me to do, but I warned you that you'd have to figure some shit out on your own. And this is what I did. I let you figure it out on your own, which that may very well be what it was. Or he had just put her in an impossible spot. Or, ¿por qué no los dos? It could be ambos. Like, he put her in an impossible spot and she was like, well, I guess this is as good an opportunity as any to see if he can watch his own back for a change. And the answer is kind of, because Lindon isn't responsible for the fact that they wind up getting out of the situation that they had originally been in once they are captured. But it is that Lindon is so interesting that he has attracted the attention of someone who is capable of getting them out of that situation. So I give Lindon 50% credit on that. Like, it wasn't him directly, but if he weren't who he was, he wouldn't have had the help that he got, you know? But anyway, I'm as usual getting ahead of myself because first we have to talk about him going to Yaren with this plan. This is so great, guys, because I fully was in Lindon's headspace in this scene when he comes to her and is basically like, first of all, we can get all these scales, which will allow me to level up and will probably help you out also. Second of all, we're going to be able to help all of the miners escape, which I know that you like. He's out here really trying to make his case in a way that suggests he intends to batten down the hatches while Yaren yells at him all the reasons why they shouldn't do this and make his way to the other side, hopefully. And instead, he only has to explain one or two things in response to some concerns she has before she's wholeheartedly interested. And I'm going to read this spot a little bit. let's see. First, she asks about, obviously they're going to have scripts that they have people like imprisoned behind. Do you know how to disable them? And he says, well, I mean, I don't, but we have some constructs that can, essentially. The other thing is she's talking about the escape, and he says, fly away on the cloud. And she's like, dude, I know that where you come from, this cloud was like the shit and nobody else had one. But I got news for you. The Fishers alone have 3. And other people have remnants that they can fly on. So you're acting like, whoa, we'll have this clean getaway and not a soul will be able to pursue us. But yeah, they can. And he says, I've thought of that. And he pulls out this map that he drew really crudely. Whenever I have a new appreciation for the phrase crudely drawn map, if you guys have ever attempted to draw a map of anything with any sort of clarity, you will know exactly what I mean when I say that shit is a mess. It is so hard to, yeah. So it turns out that this is a map of the bathhouse and that he has talked about exactly where they can fly to and where is sort of like going to be abandoned, what do you call them? Structures that they can hide in. And she just looks at it finally and says, let's burn them. He took the plan from her, a little taken aback. You'll do it? She rested a hand on the hilt of her sword. We're working for the Fishers now, and they get along with the Sand Vipers like 2 tigers in one cage. And they kidnapped you. You let an enemy take one of yours without response, and you're giving them signed permission to do it again. The Sand Vipers haven't slipped out of my memory any more than Heaven's Glory has. Her expression darkened further. They think I'm not coming back to clean their whole rotten house and burn it down, then they're getting a surprise. She'd agreed to his plan, and even his own family had never fought for him. But some of his warm feelings cooled in the face of her vengeful oath. He wasn't sure why he felt that way. Revenge had always been part of the sacred arts, as widely celebrated in stories as honorable duels. But her whole demeanor changes when she talks about revenge. Something in the air felt dark and heavy and wrong. It was his own weakness. That's what his father would have told him, and Lindon knew he was right. Yaren was wiser, stronger, more knowledgeable, and more experienced. He was seeing the world as a child. Suddenly ashamed of his own cowardice, he bowed to her. Okay, so this is super interesting to me because it just shows what different people they are. Lindon thinks that it's weakness that he has this reaction to her wanting vengeance, but it makes sense that he thinks that it's weakness because we get told so many times throughout these books so far how the pride of a sacred artist is more valuable to them than their own life. Like, pride is everything to these people. And so, of course, revenge would be at the top of the list because you can't suffer anyone to come at you if you have pride and not hit back in some way or make it clear that you remember and are capable of doing something to defend yourself. Now, the thing is, if you let pride rule you as a person, you are doomed. And that, I think, is what Yaren gets. And he gets it on such a fundamental gut level that he doesn't even understand that that's what he gets. Yaren, meanwhile, is incredibly advanced in terms of her actual leveling up to low gold. But Yaren has been put through this sort of meat grinder to get her there. And yet she does not have the advancement in her spirit where it counts in this sort of regard. It's like she's heading in the general right direction and does not seem like a bad person. So I'm not saying that she couldn't make progress along this path, but she's certainly nowhere near, because in some ways she's gone through so many terrible things. She sees the world in a very different way than Lindon does. And while I definitely respect what she says a little bit later when she's talking to Ethan about it, and she says, like, he's never had to fight for his life. He doesn't know what it's like out there. I understand that can be seen as a weakness of his, that he hasn't gone through the gauntlet. There's also something innate in him that has nothing to do with how he was brought up or how he's been treated, that seems to be simply who he is. And that part of him is kinder and more capable of compassion and forgiveness than most characters you read about. He has, I think that's part of why when I was talking about how Jai Long, is it Jai? I talked about how weirdly similar his situation is to Lindon in some ways, where he's been rejected by his family for not being what they need in order to personally advance their agenda. But he is so embittered and wants so badly to hurt them in response to what they did to him. And Lindon, reminder, is on this whole mission in order to save Sacred Valley and his family, despite the way they treated him. They don't care about him. They would gladly see him die and be wiped from their list of responsibilities. He is a burden and an embarrassment. And yet he is out here pushing himself because the thought of them being killed in the vision that he saw is simply unacceptable. So he's got this sort of purity to him. And it's not even a question. It's not even like he doesn't even have to ask himself, do I really want to do this? Is it worth it? Would they do this for me? It doesn't even enter his mind to ask those kinds of questions. He is simply a good person in his guts. He is a good person on an instinctive level. And I believe Yaren is a good person who has had it beaten out of her that it's still in her somewhere. But she's been taught that all of her instincts were not correct or were going to come back and bite her in some way. And she really believed that and internalized that. And I'm hoping that her teaming up with Lindon is going to sort of bring that back to the surface. However, she's not wrong. He does need to go through some brutal trials in order to advance, because that's what life is, kids. The older I get, the more I realize I know when I read stories about being able to see what's coming in the future, those kinds of stories where there's a prophecy or somebody has a vision or, there's time travel and you get to see where things are headed. Those stories often revolve around whether it's even possible to change what you see coming, whether it's even possible to alter the path that you're on, or do your attempts at alterations precipitate you winding up exactly where you were going to wind up. But what I find interesting when we're talking about a small level sort of story on like that, and, somebody realizes that some terrible thing is going to happen to them personally, like a friend is going to pass away, a loved one is going to get in a car accident, you know, something like that, or they're going to lose their job, or something that could be really devastating is on the horizon. Our instinct is always to spare ourselves that pain, right? It's just, we can't help it. As human beings, we don't appreciate or understand pain, especially in the short term. And we do everything we can to avoid it. But I am certain, if you look back at your own life, there are moments that you, at the time, thought, this is a catastrophe. This is the end of everything that I wanted for my life. And then you look at it from your current perspective and realize what a goddamn goose you were, and how wrong you were, and how that happening precipitated a whole other thing that you hadn't even conceived of, because you're just one small stupid person who doesn't have the whole picture. So one of the worst times of my life, it wasn't even my divorce, although that was devastating because it occurred right after my father's death and my grandmother's death. So it was just a bad year of my life. But I moved down here. I got the easiest job to get that I could, which was at this grocery store. It was it was a bad job. And I was accepted at a bank as a teller. And it was the first time I had ever had anything like a desk job, anything that wasn't in the service industry in some capacity. And I was elated, you guys, when I got that job. I was so excited and so certain. I'm an organized person. I'm good with people. I take things pretty seriously at work. It seemed like it was made for me. And then I got fired because I made a comment on my Facebook page that I had forgotten. You weren't even allowed to mention that somebody had come to the bank. It was totally against privacy policy. And I just mentioned so-and-so came in today and it was so nice to see them or whatever. And that was enough. My losing that job ripped my heart out because it was the first step forward that I really felt like I had taken, that was mine, that I had accomplished in at least a year and a half of absolute garbage. And Owen has told me since that watching me go through that, losing that job, was one of the hardest things he's ever been through, because he wanted so bad to help and he didn't know what to do. And he couldn't believe the pain I was in. He could see it. And I would have done anything if you had told me you're going to be losing your job in a couple of weeks, anything to keep that job. But I would not have known that losing that job is what propelled me into becoming a full-time podcaster and having this as my job. And I had this idea, if I succeeded at that bank job, that eventually I would get put on full-time. Eventually I would get benefits. Eventually. There is no reason that that's true. And I now am making more money than I was at that job. It took a long time to get here, and it was difficult. And I work 50 hours a week at least. So it's not like it's perfect, but it's so much more than I could ever have thought was possible for myself to be able to do this now. And I would absolutely have tried to ruin it if I had been told simply, you're going to lose your job. And only that. If I was only given that sort of information. So Yaron talking about how you need to go through terrible pain where you see no way out, where it feels like nobody has your back, where all you can do is just stay alive and make yourself do that, even though it would be low-key easier if you didn't. That is what advances you. And that, it's a very different sort of situation, but the feeling behind it was the same, of just kind of why am I doing this? What am I bothering with? I can't win. Who cares? And forcing yourself to keep moving forward anyway. And I just love how much they each bring to the table. Yaren has this just iron will, simply not accepting anything less than what she has determined she needs at this moment, and fighting tooth and claw to get it. And then Lindon is the polar opposite of immediately seeing things from other people's perspective, immediately seeing the worth of others in a way they don't even see it. They have so much pride, and yet what he sees in them is not what they are trying to put out to the world. And he isn't as intimidated at the enormousness of the powers around him so much as he is entranced and impressed and excited by it. Just the two, it's a really fun pairing. I really like it, and it's done subtly enough that it doesn't feel like you're being banged over the head with it all the time. It's just moments like this, you know? He doesn't like the idea of her simply defending her pride in this, like, very political, tactical, ruthlessly thought out sort of way. He wants to do this because it will help him advance, and it will save a bunch of suffering prisoners. And that is simply not a factor when she talks about why she wants to do this. And I think that bums him out. She's willing to help, but it seems like for all the wrong reasons. And I wonder if she will ever come around to his line of thinking. You know, I wonder if his mentioning we can save the miners, it doesn't seem to have this like effect that he was hoping for. And I wonder if it will. You know, I really hope eventually she gets there, but I also need her to be as strong as she is now forever. How do you manage both? That's a really tricky thing. So at this point, he tells her that he's coming with her, and she's like, it says she gave him a look of such gratitude that he forgot all his misgivings a moment before. Then something crooned, high and desperate like a mewling baby bird. And he pulls out that jar that has the sylvan river seed in it. And it looks like it's dying. It's like completely like lethargic and just sort of sad and crying and collapsing. And Yaren's like, dude, what are you feeding the thing? And it says, Sylvan River Seed, they thought it had some sort of water aspect, and they planned to give it to someone with pure Madra. There it is then. Feed it Madra. Are you sure that'll work? And he does that, and all of a sudden, it just completely pops up and seems fine. And not only that, but as he continues to feed it, appears to grow significantly over a very short period of time. I am super duper curious what this thing is going to be, because I can't help but wonder if he's got unlimited pure Madra to feed it. It could be real big, right? Like, could it be? He says something about how it's almost like a remnant. And I wonder how much like a remnant. Like, can it become a part of him? Is that something that can happen? I would assume not, but I don't know what's possible. And you know what? No matter what anybody says to him in answer to that question, I couldn't necessarily believe them, because nobody seems to know everything that's possible either. So, yeah, he says, it's like a remnant. Maybe it was a remnant, though it seemed both smaller and more substantial than most he'd seen. Remnants gained in power and intelligence by taking in human Madra, the purer the better, which was where the legends of remnants abducting children came from. He'd used his Madra as a bargaining chip with remnants in the past, but if he treated this being as a remnant in a cage rather than a stolen creature, what was it going to become? What was he growing in his pack? So, and it says, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure that I hit all my bases this time, because I'm almost halfway through my allotted time. And I haven't even gotten through all of chapter 12 yet. I have talked a lot about what comes later, though, so it's okay. So, let's see. She cuts her hair. That's right. Offers to give him a haircut, which he declines. And then we go into, at first, the plan worked flawlessly. And it does. Like, he has thought this through. He has taken a ton of notes on where all of the people who work here are, where they go at what time, when they take their breaks, what their, habits are on their break. Do they tend to stay in the same spot every day or what? And they have to create sort of Sand Viper-esque outfits that look from a distance as if they are Sand Vipers, because they have to have something that like appears to be like the gold sign of the serpent like sunk into their arm, which I find so funny that they're just like, they just got some tubes. And Yaren is having some trouble hiding her own gold sign because she still has that fucking bladed arm on her back. And she isn't as good at putting it away and controlling it as she needs to be. It had taken them almost an hour of bending and folding to get it stuck between her furs and her pack. But with the bear-like head of a dreadbeast over her hair, hide concealing the red rope around her waist, and her sword arm hidden, even Lindon had trouble recognizing her. He had to admit it was satisfying when these all-powerful golds scurried away at a single sight of his Sand Viper uniform and an angry scowl. So they post up the cloud tent, and his pack is there. And I really wanted to know how he could guarantee this shit wasn't going to be stolen the instant that he walked away. I guess they think it's like decently hidden, but nevertheless, it's just so much valuable stuff in one spot, and I just can't imagine leaving it alone. So everything slid smoothly along, even up to the point when they reached the cages. So he goes and he manages to like break that protective circle, and he looks up, and all of a sudden, fucking Jai Long appears. He has just stepped out from this spot, and Jai Long always stays in his tent in the morning. He always is in the same spot and has been for ages, and Lindon can't understand what he's doing here. And we find out a little bit later that when you are gold level, you can feel people's spirits. So it appears that's how Jai Long's not here like by coincidence. It appears that he is here specifically looking out for Lindon because he has assigned people to track his spirit and the feel of him, because he's a copper and that's just super rare. I will keep you as miners instead of killing you as intruders to save face for the fishers. You have my word. Yaren, meanwhile, had immediately drawn her white sword against young Chief Kral. He wore black furs, finer than those of his subordinates, and he still gave off the air of unimpeachable dignity, even while holding an awl in each hand. Jai Long didn't even look to the side where his young chief faced Yaren. He remained focused on Lindon. You want to know why? He asked. Lindon didn't dare to nod. Do you know how many coppers there are in the 5 factions alliance above the age of 6? There's 1. One of my men happened to notice a copper days ago when you were sneaking around the camp and reported you. I knew you could only be the newly adopted fisher. And Lindon's just like, God damn it. Like, he's just so irritated at the fact that he was spotted like so much earlier than this, you know? And he says, I had them sense your spirit. And Lindon suddenly realizes he knows so little about what's possible after a certain level that the idea this was even an ability that these people had never even crossed his mind. And he starts to realize how much ignorance is going to be like a factor in maybe tripping him up in the future as well if he gets through this. Like, and that is the first step towards wisdom, right? Knowing how much you don't know, realizing how completely how completely narrow your view has been up until this point. And that's part of what's so difficult when you meet people who haven't seemed to have reached that point in their psyche, I guess. You are so aware that there are other experiences of life out there and other things, struggles that people have, and yet you're up against somebody else who seems to believe their experience is what everyone experiences. And that is what keeps them with the understanding of a child. So this is a good moment for him in its way, but it's certainly not welcome at this moment. So then we get this fight between Yaren and Crawl. Eventually he gets the better of her with his remnant, and it bites her, and it has that toxic aspect. And once things like calm down, they give her an antidote, but she is still pretty fucked up afterwards. So at this point, Lindon's watching her be killed and realizes that there's absolutely nothing he can do to help. And he's standing there staring, not sure. He's like, I have to do something. And he's trying to sort of make a mental list of like the options that he has available to him, but he's kind of coming up with nothing. And somebody comes in and mentions that there is a fisher coming. And this is when our friend Fisher Gesha rolls up on her on her spider legs, and Crawl says to her, like, oh yeah, you can hear that, huh? Screams of our enemies are like music to our ears. And she says, enemies? I see none of your enemies here. It was Jai Long's turn to speak. Do you not? 2 new fishers sneaking into our camp, dutifully assigned to us according to the alliance. If they were working for you, then that's an unprovoked act of aggression on your part. Gesha's gaze flicked to Yaren, not to Lindon. Are children supposed to be placid and well-behaved now? I made mistakes when I was young. If they're not yours, Jai Long continued, I'll work them in the mines. If they are, then I've captured them as the result of honorable combat, and they will still work in the mines. But in that case, you were the ones who worked to undermine us, only days before Aurelius arrives. And this is when she's just like, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't see any fishers here. Only you, honored elder, Crawl said, with his respectable expression back on. Then I will return. Without the slightest glance in Lindon's direction, she drifted off on a spider's legs. Yaren's screams continued. I think that this is her putting Yaren to the test. This is, and that is not to say that she doesn't care about Lindon. That is not to say that she is trying to save Lindon in her way. I think she's hoping Lindon will figure out his way out of this, but she has let go of him and is realizing that she has to do what's best for her clan overall, rather than get wrapped up in this kid that's only been around for a few days, you know? And honestly, when you're looking at things from a rational perspective, that's the right decision to make, but it just sucks for him in this moment. So then we cut to Athan. Athan watched, sipping from a bottle of what tasted like distilled poison, as the old fisher departed. The drama had largely faded at that point, but he stayed to see the night shift of miners arrive. They dropped off their scales, headed to their cages, and switched for the day crew. And he's, taking note of Yaren and Lindon and, thinking about how he's going to handle the two of them. In his experience, practically anything became an adventure if framed properly. Her spirit was still flawless, her foundation solid. there was the problematic matter of her past, as some of the Sand Vipers had learned when they tried to unravel the rope around her waist. And rope is in quotes. I'm assuming it's in quotes due to the fact that it is actually made of Madra. But I'm wondering if there isn't even another aspect of it here. It was her character he was interested in now. If she had the strength of will to go along with her powers as he suspected she did, she would be perfect. Which brought him to Lindon, who was simultaneously more puzzling and more intriguing. Someone had meddled with Lindon in a way that he couldn't quite put his finger on. Maybe it would occur to him later. Either way, the boy was still a featureless ball of clay just waiting to be shaped. Would he work out for Ethan's purposes? Probably not, but the shaping process was fun, and if nothing else, it would be something to occupy Ethan's attention for a few years, and there was fun to be had. Why not start immediately? So he goes up to Jailong and just yells, "They'll kill us all," into his ear. And Jailong has quite a reaction to this. Tries to, get him with a spear. And Ethan effortlessly dodges it, ducks it, whatever. And he says, "What are you doing here?" And Ethan's like, I'm surrendering so that I can work in the mines for my sins. Yeah, that's it. I'm a cursed man, racked with guilt. And Jailong is not an idiot and knows that this dude could easily, he's putting himself in this position for some reason. But there's a sense of, first of all, I'm sure that you will be helpful to us in your way if you are going to do the thing. And if you're doing this for some other purpose, I don't feel going up against you is going to work out particularly healthily for me. He's just the sort of guy that it doesn't seem like anybody really wants to say no to because there's an inevitability to him. You're getting your way one way or another, so I guess I might as well make it easy on myself. So he snaps the collar on him, and then they head inside, and Lindon is being put to work on mining for the first time. Again, Yaren was given the antidote to this poison, that seeped into her system from the remnant. So she's also being put to work, but it's a much different, she's just really exhausted, and they have these collars on that prevent them from being able to make use of their Madra in the normal way. So I'm assuming that because of that, she isn't able to heal herself as easily as she normally would by cycling, because I think that sort of prevents it. I may be misunderstanding that, but I think. So this moment is really good. I love this. Lindon is brought into this room, in a room shaped like a cylinder where 5 other hallways identical to their own had ended. The room was smaller than he'd expected, and while they weren't crowded, he could see why the Sand Vipers hadn't taken more miners. His first question, when one of the guards raised a torch, was why this room had been made of a different type of stone. Unlike the blocks of the hallway, these were splashed with darker shades of color, as though the blocks had been splattered with he missed a step. Fragments of bone were more common than pebbles on the floor. All clean, and none larger than his thumbnail. A distinct scent of copper and rot lingered in the air, and the stone was stained twice as high as his head. Whatever happened here, it hadn't left any bodies. The dead had been blasted apart. Yikes. That's not something you want to find out about as you're heading into your first day on a new job. Don't love that. So they have these harvesters that are in their handles, which they have to power using their Madra. But the thing is, he's only a copper, so he runs out really, really fast. And it becomes clear how frustrating this is. When he first runs out, the guard assumes that he is just shirking. And then notices he doesn't have his collar on because he wasn't given one because he's a copper. And the dude begins to like beat the hell out of him. And finally somebody steps in. And it was, guess who? Ethan. I love this so much. Something skittered across the floor like a stone across the surface of the pond, and the guard tripped. His foot flew out behind him, and for an instant Lindon expected him to plant his face in the floor. But he was still a gold, and he caught himself with one palm against the ground, flipping upright. He spun around, pulling a second axe from his belt. "Which one of you?" he growled, choked with anger. A man in the corner lifted his head and met Lindon's eye, winking. "Be peaceful, Taj," said one of the leaders. "You tripped. And he's a copper. Collar won't make him any weaker than he already is." And this is when Lindon gets his first taste of what it feels like when somebody senses his spirit, his soul. Because the guard sort of like reaches out in this weird psychic way and he feels a touch on him, like inside. And it says, for the rest of the day, Lindon was allowed to stop and cycle whenever he needed, though the first time he was sure Tosh would split his head for stopping the harvester. Instead, the guards treated him like he didn't exist. When Yeren so much as glanced up, they shouted her back down. He was an exception. That had to be an advantage somehow. So, here comes Ethan. And let me just tell you, Ethan does not have time for this bullshit today. Ethan is here to recruit his people, if he can. He is very single-minded in that respect. And he is going to put them through their paces right now, whether or not these guards have other plans. It's really funny how much he's willing to like just kind of ride the wave of whatever's actually happening at the moment. And then he will like stick his oar in, so to speak, all of a sudden. Like he's decided like, all right, this has gone far enough. Now we're doing my thing. And I would love to be in his head to see exactly why he steps in each of the places that he does. But it's really great. So Ethan starts off being like, oh, isn't this harvester ingenious? And the guards are already like, you're not supposed to be talking. Like, just that is a problem. But then this dude starts to come at Ethan. Tosh had an axe in each hand. Tosh is the name of the guard that got tripped. It's odd for me because, like, I'm called Tosh by a lot of my friends. So it's odd to read that in a book at all because it's an infrequently used name. And also for it to be a man's name I've never seen. The yellow-haired man followed him. You know, there's an opportunity for you here. The measure of a sacred artist isn't talent. It's how you respond to risk. Lindon turned away, trying to make it clear he wasn't speaking. Tosh had arrived, an axe in each hand. It's kind of like this, Ethan said, and pivoted on the balls of his feet to deliver an overhand punch. Straight at Lindon. Lindon released the harvester, jerking to the side. He slammed into Tosh's legs, no matter how strong the gold was. He'd been caught in mid-stride. He stumbled halfway falling and caught himself on the lip of a nearby harvester. The guard looked up at Lindon with a face like a furnace. What do you do when you're met with danger? Ethan asked conversationally. Do you fight? Do you beg for forgiveness? Do you listen to me? Now, Yeren. Yeren's hand shot out, stopping Tosh from planting his axe in Lindon's skull. She looked back at Ethan, looking as stunned as Lindon felt. One step to your left, Ethan said, and Lindon followed his instructions. In a blur of motion, Tosh had already thrown one axe, and it whistled through the air to clatter against the wall. Now everyone was staring at Ethan, Lindon included. Let him go, Ethan said, and Yeren released Tosh just as he swiped at her arm with his remaining axe. Lindon, take 2 steps back and then sit down. And Lindon, at this point, is kind of like, all right, what the fuck? And he goes up to him and bows. And in bowing, manages to dodge this fucking, I'm assuming, axe that goes whistling over his head. Something large and snarling passed over Lindon's head, ruffling his hair, and latched onto Todd. Oh no, it's a monster. My bad. It's not even an axe. Well done, Ethan said, patting Lindon on the shoulder. Oh God. I just love Ethan is just so casual about the whole thing. Everybody here who isn't part of what he needs is so incidental to him. It's not even that he has contempt for these people. Like I've said, they just don't really matter. You know, it's like he's on a quest in a video game and he's just running by people in order to get at the one person that he actually needs to talk to in order to complete this quest. And that's pretty much all he really needs to worry about. So all of these openings have appeared, and there are these creatures beginning to attack the place. And this is all very routine, evidently. So only two of the miners stood in the middle of the deluge. Ethan, I keep wanting to call him Ethan because of the way it's spelled, and Yeren. Yeren had lifted the harvester with one hand. It was taking her obvious effort, which must have been the collar's effect, and punched a rotting dog with the iron barrel on her fist. Ethan was wandering around seemingly at random, taking a casual stroll around the room, but none of the dread beasts ever latched on to him. He grabbed Lindon by the shoulder as he passed, which pulled Lindon to his feet just in time to avoid a fox-like beast's snarling attack. So this is when Ethan begins to tell him about this strange tiger that people breed. And they're called the Heavenly Sky Tiger. And they breed exactly 2 cubs every time. And only one of them will survive because they wind up fighting to the death. And as a little boy, he had been really saddened at the idea that one of these cubs was going to die. So despite everything, he insisted on looking after the 2 of them and keeping them from fighting so that they would both survive. And they eventually both wasted away and died. And he finds out later, a Heavenly Sky Tiger, the body of their sibling is like an elixir. If one does not consume the other, their madra isn't strong enough to support their bodies, and they will inevitably die. So basically, between the 2 of them, there's only enough madra for one, and whomever manages to fight the other for it gets it and gets to live. And this is when Ethan says, without risk, without battle, without a willingness to fight, you will stay weak. And weakness means death. Do you agree? I will remind you that he's talking in this extremely relaxed way, as if he's having a cup of coffee with Lindon, when in fact Lindon is fighting for his life against a bunch of magical creatures amongst a crew of like 20 others who are doing the same thing. And remnants begin to come out of the creatures that they, like the rotten dogs and whatnot, which I completely forgot that they were like an additional factor. And Jesus, I know I keep saying it, but this seems so unfair. I really hate it. Let's see. Instead, a rainbow of light bloomed on the floor and remnants started to climb up from corpses. Something seized Lindon from behind, grabbing him beneath both arms. He flailed in blind panic before he was hurled up, sliding perfectly into one of the tunnels in the wall. It didn't even hurt much. He scraped his chin a bit on the stone floor, and his ribs might be a little bruised, but he'd slid into the tunnel at exactly the right angle to avoid injury. He scrambled back to the entrance, looking down, where he saw Ethan smiling up at him. The yellow-haired man gave a cheery wave and then reached to one side without looking. Yeren swiped at his hand, but he was ready for her, and a second later she slid into the tunnel beside Lindon. She growled as she stood. Guys, I can't tell you how much I love Ethan's propensity for cheery waves. I love it so much. He's doing this impossible shit. He knows how completely awed and dumbfounded people are by what he's able to do. And it's not even like he's being like smug, even though my instinctive, like, when I picture him, I will give him a smug look occasionally, but I don't feel like that's accurate. I just can't get enough of this weirdo. What a dude. And it turns out later we find out that he's a janitor, which I have a hard time believing that's the whole story. But also, if it is the whole story, I will love it so, so much. I really will. Those of you who don't know, Owen is his family owns a janitorial service, and he's like, you know, the manager of it. So he's essentially a manager also. And if I got to tell him that there was like a supernatural, godlike janitor in this series and be telling him the truth, I would love it so, so much. So they begin to head out faster. Ethan jumps up there and lands next to them, and they all head out together. And Lindon asks him, because he says a few things about like what they need to look out for, asks him, can you see the future? And he says, better, I can see the present. I have 1,000 eyes and 10,000 ears. I know everything that happens within range of my spirit. So as soon as an enemy starts to move, I simply step aside. It's like fighting the blind. Can't hit too hard with that, Yaren observed. Ethan, bowed to her. Just so. Superior awareness is perhaps the greatest power of all. But as far as weapons go, knowledge lacks a certain heft, though it does make me frustrating to kill. No one's managed it so far. So Lindon asks him, how did they manage to capture you? And he does the thing where he says a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with the answer. And he says, I'll tell you the truth. I came from the Black Flame Empire. Not long ago, I happened to sense a great power coming from the west. I brought it to the attention of my clan, who instructed me to investigate. When I arrived here, I found this incredible pyramid had drawn up all the aura for miles. Of course, I wasn't the only one. Every sacred artist in the desolate wilds had beaten me to it. The ruins are loud and well worth investigating, but a treasure to a wilderness sect is not necessarily worthy of attention from a major Black Flame clan. There's quite a nice spear in here, but it looks like it would be most suitable for the Jai clan. It's not useful for me, so I gave up on it a long time ago. So that's pretty amazing that he can tell the spear is definitely there, but he also isn't super impressed with it. It seems like very specific. And he doesn't want it, which is particularly interesting. I would love to hear Jai Long's reaction to these words. I would love for him to hear somebody say, oh yeah, it's in there, and I'm not really that into it. Thanks, though. Pass. I feel like Jai Long would just, like, collapse. And he says, a spear isn't interesting. Far more than a mere weapon. We value talent. And Lindon says, I should have realized, I'm sorry. Can I ask which? And Ethan stops him and asks, all right, look, I don't want to be weird about this, but what the fuck is going on with your core? And this is another moment of Lindon realizing, my God, these people who have leveled up can do shit I never imagined. The idea that somebody can tell he has 2 cores just looking at him, apparently, is something that he can't wrap his brain around. And he explains what's going on. And then Ethan instructs him on a new breathing pattern. And he tells him that your breathing technique is all focused inward, which has knotted your Madra flow. It's fine for pure Madra, but if you are going to try and level up to iron, you're going to need to fix that shit. So he says that he needs to loop his Madra outward into all of his extremities instead of having it just, concentrated so central. And when Lindon starts to do it, he realizes immediately, like, okay, I see what you mean. But also, it's really hard. And he's concerned that the moment that he stops completely focusing on it, he's going to lose it. To which Ethan's like, oh, no, yeah, you will. I mean, you're brand new at this. Of course, you're not going to be able to just do this without thinking. You just have to keep doing it. That's the only solution to that. I'm sorry. Practice makes perfect. It's crazy when you look back at the first time you did a thing, if you do it all the time now, to how like uncertain you were at the time. You know, I just love taking stock occasionally. I look at, for example, what it was like for me to do a podcast in my early days compared to now. And it's just like nothing now, you know? So this is when they ask who he is. And he says that he is the greatest janitor in all existence. Lest you think I'm speaking figuratively, let me clarify. My clan organizes the street sweepers in Black Flame City. We supervise sewer maintenance. We dig ditches and light lamps and sweep chimneys. Dirty hands are a mark of pride. Those are the words by which we live. And I love that Lindon is like, dude, you're wearing pure white. And these are like the most expensive clothes I've ever set eyes on. Do you really want me to believe this story? Because I don't see it. And he says, I grew up in the sewers, ankle deep in what you might call sludge. They used similar scripts to control intake and outflow, so if this works on similar principles, there we have it. A single rune sparked to life, sending a ripple of light flaring down the line of script in either direction. With a grating sound, a stone slab slid upward, revealing an open doorway onto a flight of stairs leading up. So then he tells Lindon, I have a task for you. Your current breathing technique is sufficient if you're planning to split your core again, but it's building a wall between you and iron. So he tells him about the technique, and then he says, okay, now I want you to go up those stairs and keep that breathing technique as you go up the stairs. And Lindon heads up there and immediately runs into a fucking creature. A tan centipede. And he's realizing that this is like the sand viper remnant. Like, it's not the remnant of it, but he has seen the remnants of this kind of creature on the sand vipers. And he hears Ethan say, I know what's up there, and he can handle it. And then we go to chapter 14, which is basically all the trial by fire and the explanation to Yaren. Now, Yaren is not here for this bullshit. She wants to go up there. She wants to save her friend. She thinks this guy is no good, that he has tricked the two of them, which he has. She's not wrong. And when she says, pop the door back open because he closes it, he says, but he's not finished yet. And he tells her, I'm keeping an eye for some new talent. And Yaren assumes basically that what this dude is doing is holding a friend hostage in order to get her to join up, because there have been so many clans that wanted her as one of their members that she fully is like, you know, nobody's ever done it this way before, but it makes sense. And she agrees to go because she's like, well, I can just bail out of it eventually anyway. My master would have actually probably approved of that plan. And he says, there's a saying where I come from, a bad student is a weight around his teacher's neck. I'd rather go back empty-handed than take someone who isn't ready. So this is confusing to her because she's assuming, of course, that this is all about getting her, which it's not even pride on her part. It's just the way things are. Like, she thinks that she sees this clearly. And she says, if he dies, I'm not going anywhere. And Ethan says, oh, you're more than good enough on your own. Your foundation is flawless. It would be an honor. But I find myself intrigued by your copper friend. I want to teach him. He's a truly blank canvas. He the most important quality for any sacred artist is drive. He needs the resolve to push through any obstacle in his path, and that kind of focus is very difficult to teach. But here we have someone who split his own core, a copper, working side by side with golds. Something's driving him, and it might be enough to take him to the top. And this is when she says he's blind. The world's all jade beds and silk sheets for him. He's never seen how ugly it gets. He doesn't know. And Ethan says, what do you think I'm trying to teach him? And all of a sudden she realizes what's going on. Like, she understands and sort of backs off. And even when she speaks to Lindon through the door and Lindon's begging for help, she doesn't help. She's like, look, dude, this is it. You need to push through. This is how you need to do it. And Ethan even says to her, you need to push yourself. And it says she gave that some measured thought. Advancement along sword paths is very straightforward at this stage. Immerse yourself in the sword, cycle on the battlefield, find opponents who will push you to the very edge of life and death. There's a reason why it's one of the most common aspects. You'll need your sword to really practice, so just sit and cycle until I return. We have to make sure you're in your best condition, don't we? If he dies before I get back, you should know I am very sorry, but some paths are shorter than others. And then he just yanks the fucking collar off his neck, like no problem. It doesn't even like faze him. And he takes off. And then we have the conversation between her and Lindon. And I loved it. I really did. And all of a sudden, he manages to drop some stones on these creatures. I tossed a scale between the remnants and they fought for it until one died. Then I grabbed a piece of one and beat the other to death with it. And eventually Ethan comes back and is like, hey, good for you. I fucking knew you could do it. And she's like, all right, so how about we get out of here? And Ethan's like, get out of here? Why would we do that? This is exactly what we need right here. And he tosses a couple of packs to Lindon and then closes the damn door again. I should have known. I should have known. So I'm out of time. And again, there's a thing at the end here with Jai Long. And I'm so sorry, Jai Long, that I keep shorting you. But I promise, Andrew, because I feel like this needs more time. I can't really rush this. I will start off the next episode and I will talk about this more. And thankfully it's not like, it's something that I think will probably go with the next section, if I'm not mistaken, because it feels like the start of a new rhythm of the story. So my apologies. I keep doing this. There's so much to talk about that I am running out of time so often. This is me. It's my problem. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying this so far. So I hope that you guys are enjoying the coverage too. Thank you again, Andrew. I promise I'll make it up to you. And I will be seeing you guys again tomorrow, I believe, with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.